My son locked the basement door. Then my husband exposed a 20-year lie. The evening began the way most evenings did in that house, quietly and without any clear beginning. The sky outside had already turned dark, and the streetlights cast long yellow lines across the living room curtains. Inside, the house smelled faintly of cooked rice and warm oil, the kind of smell that lingered even after the dishes were washed. The mother moved slowly through the kitchen, wiping the counter with a damp cloth, listening to the low hum of the refrigerator and the ticking wall clock above the sink. Hit that subscribe button and tap the bell icon so you never miss our latest uploads. She liked these moments, when the day was almost done and nothing was demanded of her except small, simple tasks. Still, something felt off. It wasn't loud or dramatic. It was more like a tightness in the air, the kind you feel before a storm that never quite arrives. She tried to ignore it, telling herself she was just tired. Her son sat at the dining table, his phone face down in front of him. Normally, he would be scrolling through messages or watching short videos, laughing quietly at things she didn't understand. Tonight, he stared at the wood grain of the table as if it held answers to questions he wasn't asking out loud. When she asked him how school went, he shrugged without looking up and said, "Fine." The word was clipped, like it had been cut short before it was fully formed. She noticed how his shoulders were tense, pulled up closer to his ears than usual. He barely touched his food. He pushed the rice around with his spoon, breaking it into small piles, then leaving them there. She wanted to ask more, to press gently the way she used to when he was younger, but she hesitated. Lately, every extra question seemed to push him further away. Across the room, her husband sat on the couch with the television on low volume. A news channel flickered silently, images changing every few seconds. He wasn't really watching. His eyes were fixed on the screen, but they seemed unfocused, as if his thoughts were somewhere else entirely. Every now and then, he checked his watch, even though there was nowhere he needed to be. He looked calm on the surface. His face showed no anger, no fear. But the mother knew him well enough to sense distance when she saw it. He had a habit of pulling inward when something weighed on him. He would become polite, careful with his words, as if afraid that speaking too freely might cause something to break. She carried the plates to the sink, listening to the soft clink of ceramic. The sound felt too loud in the quiet house. When she turned on the tap, the rush of water felt like relief, something solid and familiar. She focused on the simple act of washing dishes, letting her mind wander. Her thoughts drifted to the basement without her meaning to them. The door to it was just off the hallway, half hidden behind a tall cabinet. The basement wasn't a place they used often. Mostly, it held old boxes filled with clothes that no longer fit anyone, broken appliances they never got around to throwing away, and holiday decorations that came out once a year. It was a space tied to the past more than the present. She remembered standing there years ago, holding her son when he was small, pointing out dusty boxes and telling him stories about what was inside. Back then, the basement had felt like a harmless place, almost boring. Just storage. Just memories. When she finished washing the dishes, she dried her hands and leaned against the counter. She watched her son get up from the table and walk toward his room without saying anything. His footsteps were heavier than usual. The door closed behind him with a soft click, not a slam, but firm enough to signal that he wanted to be alone. She glanced at her husband. "Everything okay?" she asked, keeping her voice light. He looked up at her, surprised, as if he hadn't realized she was there. "Yeah," he said quickly. "Just tired." She nodded, even though the answer didn't fully satisfy her. Tired was a word they both used when they didn't want to explain more. She sat down on the opposite end of the couch, leaving a small space between them. The television continued to glow, casting shifting shadows on the walls. Minutes passed in silence. The clock ticked. Somewhere outside, a car drove by, its engine fading into the distance. The house felt like it was holding its breath. She tried to relax, to sink into the cushions, but her body stayed alert. She felt like she was waiting for something, though she didn't know what. Her mind kept returning to small details she couldn't explain. The way her son had avoided her eyes. The way her husband kept rubbing his hands together, then stopping, then starting again. She told herself families had quiet nights like this all the time. Teenagers pulled away. Adults carried stress from work. Not every strange feeling meant something bad was coming. Still, the feeling wouldn't leave her. After a while, her husband stood up. "I'm going to check something in the basement," he said casually, as if he were talking about taking out the trash. She looked at him, surprised. "Now?" "Yeah. Just for a minute." He walked down the hallway without waiting for a response. She heard the cabinet scrape slightly as he opened the basement door. The sound echoed more than usual. Then came the familiar creak of the steps as he started down. She stayed on the couch, staring at the hallway. Her chest felt tight. The basement had never scared her before, but now the thought of it made her uneasy. She didn't know why. A few minutes passed. He didn't come back. She stood up, walked slowly toward the hallway, and stopped just short of the basement door. The light was on inside, casting a dull glow onto the floor. She could hear faint movement below, the shifting of boxes, maybe. Or something else. She almost called out to him, but stopped herself. She didn't want to sound nervous. She didn't want to admit, even to herself, that her heart was beating faster than it should. From down the hall, she heard her son's door open. He stepped out, looking around as if checking whether anyone was watching. When he saw her standing near the basement door, he froze. Their eyes met for a brief second. Something flashed across his face. Fear, guilt, or maybe both. Then he looked away. "What are you doing?" she asked him gently. "Nothing," he said too quickly. "I was just thirsty." He walked past her into the kitchen, grabbed a glass, and filled it with water. His hands shook slightly as he drank. She noticed, and her worry deepened. "Is everything okay?" she asked him, using the same words she had used with his father. He didn't answer right away. He set the glass down and wiped his mouth with the back of his hand. "Yeah," he said finally, but his voice didn't sound sure. She wanted to hug him, to tell him he could talk to her about anything. But something held her back. The space between them felt fragile, like one wrong move could shatter it. They stood there in silence until her husband came back up the stairs. He closed the basement door behind him carefully, almost quietly. When he saw both of them in the hallway, he paused. "Everything okay?" he asked, echoing the same question. She looked from her husband to her son. For a moment, none of them spoke. The air felt thick, heavy with things left unsaid. "Yes," she said at last, forcing a small smile. "Everything's fine." They all went back to their separate places. Her husband returned to the couch. Her son went back to his room. She went back to the kitchen, even though there was nothing left to clean. As the night wore on, the house grew quieter. The television was turned off. Lights went out one by one. When she finally lay down in bed, her husband already asleep beside her, she stared at the ceiling, unable to rest. She listened to the familiar sounds of the house settling, the soft creaks and pops that came with age. Usually, those sounds comforted her. Tonight, they made her uneasy. She thought about the basement again, about the way her husband had gone down there without explanation, about the look on her son's face when he saw her near the door. Nothing dangerous had happened. No one shouted. No one had cried. And yet, she felt certain that this ordinary evening was standing on the edge of something much bigger. As she closed her eyes, she tried to convince herself that morning would come and everything would feel normal again. But deep down, she sensed that the quiet of the night was only the beginning. The argument started over something small, the kind of thing that usually passed with a few sharp words and then faded away. It was late, and the house was already quiet when the mother noticed the glow of light slipping from under her son's bedroom door. She stood in the hallway for a moment, watching it, feeling that familiar mix of concern and hesitation. She knocked lightly. "It's late," she said through the door. "You need to sleep." There was no answer at first. Then the door opened just enough for her to see his face. His eyes were red, not from crying, but from staring at a screen too long. His jaw was tight. "I'm doing homework," he said. She knew that tone. Defensive. Guarded. "At this hour?" she asked gently. "We talked about limits." He sighed loudly and opened the door wider. "You don't trust me," he said. "You never do." "That's not true," she replied, trying to stay calm. "This is about rules, not trust." Her husband appeared behind her in the hallway, drawn by the raised voices. "What's going on?" he asked. "Nothing," the son said quickly. "Just the usual." The mother felt the conversation slipping into familiar, dangerous territory. "We're only asking you to follow what we agreed on," she said. "You've been distant lately. We're worried." "I'm fine," he snapped. "You're the ones who don't listen." The air felt charged now, like a wire pulled too tight. The father crossed his arms. "Watch your tone," he said firmly. "We're still your parents." That was when the son laughed, short and bitter. "Parents who don't trust me," he said. "Parents who think they know everything." The words stung more than she expected. She felt a rush of frustration rise in her chest. "We're trying to protect you," she said. "That's our job." "From what?" he shot back. "From myself." The argument grew louder, voices overlapping, each sentence pushing the next one harder. It wasn't about the phone anymore. It was about control, about freedom, about years of small misunderstandings stacked on top of each other. "Enough," the father said finally. "This conversation isn't going anywhere. We'll talk in the morning." The son shook his head. "No," he said. "You always say that. Nothing changes." He turned away and started down the hallway. "Come with me," he added, not looking back. "Where?" the mother asked. "The basement," he said. "I'll show you something. Maybe then you'll understand." She hesitated. The basement again. Her stomach tightened. "Now?" she asked. "Yes. Now," he said, his voice sharp. "Unless you're scared." That word pushed her forward. She didn't want to appear afraid, especially not in front of him. She glanced at her husband. He nodded slightly, his expression unreadable. They followed their son down the hallway. The basement door stood open, the light inside already on. He started down the steps without waiting, his footsteps quick and sure. "What are we looking for?" the father asked as they descended. "You'll see," the son replied. The air grew cooler as they moved lower. The familiar smell of dust and old cardboard filled the space. Boxes lined the walls, just as they always had. Nothing looked different. The son walked to the far end of the basement and stopped. "Here," he said. "This is what I meant." The mother looked around, confused. "What is it?" she asked. Before he answered, she heard the sound of the door above them closing. The click echoed sharply in the enclosed space. She turned toward the stairs just as the lock slid into place with a solid, final sound. Her heart skipped. "What was that?" she called out. There was no answer. She rushed toward the stairs and tried the door. It didn't move. She pulled harder, panic rising. "It's locked," she said, her voice trembling. The father joined her, pushing against the door. "Open this," he shouted upward. "This isn't funny." For a moment, they heard footsteps above them, moving quickly away. Then silence. "Hey!" the mother yelled. "Open the door." Nothing. The basement felt suddenly smaller, the walls closing in. Her breathing grew fast and shallow. "He wouldn't," she whispered. "He wouldn't do this." The father tried the handle again, then kicked the door once, hard. The sound echoed painfully. "This has to be a mistake," he said, though his voice lacked confidence. They waited, listening. No footsteps. No voices. Just the low hum of the house above them, distant and uncaring. "Maybe he locked it by accident," she said, clinging to the idea. He'll come back. Minutes passed. Nothing changed. The truth settled slowly, heavy and cold. This wasn't an accident. The lock hadn't slipped on its own. Someone had turned it. Someone had walked away. He did this on purpose, she said quietly. The father didn't respond right away. He leaned against the door, his head bowed. When he finally spoke, his voice was low. We need to stay calm, he said. Panicking won't help. She nodded, though her hands shook. She looked around the basement, seeing it differently now. The boxes weren't just storage. They were obstacles. The small window near the ceiling let in only a thin strip of light, too high to reach. She called out again, her voice echoing off the concrete walls. Please, she said. Talk to us. Silence answered her. The argument upstairs felt like a lifetime ago. Whatever had pushed her son to do this had crossed a line she never imagined he would approach. As the reality of the lock sank in, fear replaced confusion, and the ordinary basement became something else entirely. They were trapped. The basement felt colder as time passed, even though nothing about the space had changed. The air was the same, the walls the same, the dull light buzzing overhead. But fear has a way of changing how everything feels. What once seemed harmless now pressed in on the mother from every side. She stood near the stairs, her hand still wrapped around the door handle as if it might suddenly turn on its own. Her heart beat hard in her chest. Each beat reminded her that this was real. They were not being tested. This was not a lesson or a prank. They were locked in. This doesn't make sense, she said, mostly to herself. He wouldn't do this. Not our child. Her husband had moved away from the door and was slowly walking around the basement, looking at the walls, the boxes, and the small window near the ceiling. He looked thoughtful, not panicked. Too calm. That's not helping, she snapped, watching him. How can you walk around like this is nothing? He stopped and looked at her. I'm thinking, he said evenly. Thinking about what? She asked. How did we got trapped by our own son? She heard the sharpness in her voice but didn't stop herself. Fear had burned through her patience. He's a child, she continued. Children don't do this unless something is very wrong. Her husband sighed and leaned against a shelf stacked with old boxes. Raising your voice won't unlock the door. She stared at him. His calm felt wrong, almost insulting. Why aren't you scared? She demanded. Why don't you look surprised? I am surprised, he said. I'm just not showing it the way you want. That's not fair, she replied. I'm terrified. I'm trying to understand how our son could lock us in a basement like we're strangers. He didn't answer right away. He rubbed his hands together slowly, a habit she had seen many times before. It always appeared when he was holding something back. Say something, she pressed. Tell me you don't understand this either. He looked up at the ceiling, then back at her. Maybe we shouldn't pretend this came out of nowhere. Her stomach dropped. What does that mean? It means, he said carefully, that things have been building for a long time. Anger flared in her chest. So now this is our fault. I didn't say that. You didn't have to, she said. You're standing there like this was expected. She walked away from the stairs and paced the basement, her steps quick and uneven. Every box she passed reminded her of the past. Old school books. Toys wrapped in plastic. Clothes they had saved because letting go felt too final. We did our best, she said, her voice shaking. I stayed up all night with him. I talked to him. I listened. Did you? Her husband asked quietly. She stopped. What is that supposed to mean? It means you talked, he said. But listening is different. She laughed, a short, bitter sound. Don't rewrite history now. You were the one who kept distance. You were the one always working late. His jaw tightened. I worked to keep this family stable. And I worked to keep it together, she shot back. The words came faster now, pulled from years of unspoken frustration. Every time he pulled away, I tried to reach him. You told me to give him space. Every time I worried, you said I was overreacting. And every time I tried to set boundaries, he replied, you softened them. She stared at him. So now we're blaming parenting styles while we're locked underground? I'm saying this didn't happen in one night, he said. You're acting like this is impossible. It's not. Her chest tightened painfully. He's our son, she said. He laughed in this house. He cried in my arms. He used to ask me if monsters were real. Her voice cracked. What kind of monster locks his parents away? Silence filled the space after that. The basement light buzzed louder, or maybe she was just more aware of it. Her husband looked away. People don't wake up one day and become something else, he said. They change slowly. She watched him closely now. The calm. The careful words. A strange thought crept into her mind, one she didn't want to accept. You knew, she said softly. He looked back at her. Knew what? That he was capable of this, she said. Or at least something close. That's not fair, he replied, but there was hesitation in his voice. Then why aren't you shocked? She asked. Why aren't you yelling his name? He exhaled slowly. Because yelling won't fix what's broken. Her fear twisted into something sharper. What else are you not telling me? He stepped toward her, lowering his voice. Now is not the time. Now is exactly the time, she said. We're locked in a basement, and our child did it. If there was something wrong, something serious, I deserve to know. She thought of all the times she had asked if something was bothering their son. All the times her husband had said, it's just a phase. All the times he had changed the subject. You shut me out, she said. Both of you did. That's not true, he said quickly. Then explain this, she said, gesturing around them. Explain why I feel like I'm the only one who didn't see this coming. He was quiet for a long moment. The calm expression on his face finally cracked. Just a little. She saw it then. Not fear. Not panic. Guilt. Her heart sank. There is something, she whispered. He looked at her, really looked at her, and she felt a chill run through her that had nothing to do with the basement. This isn't just about tonight, he said. And it isn't just about him. Her mind raced. Then what is it about? He hesitated, and that hesitation felt heavier than any words. About things we never finished talking about, he said. About things we thought would go away if we ignored them. The basement seemed to close in even more. The lock above them was no longer just a barrier. It felt like a symbol, a line drawn between past and present. She hugged her arms around herself. Our child locked us in, she said. And you're telling me this is connected to something deeper? Yes, he said. Her fear shifted again, becoming something darker. Not just fear of being trapped, but fear of what she might learn next. The argument upstairs, the false reason to come down here, the lock sliding into place. It all felt planned now. Not rushed. Not emotional. Deliberate. She looked at the boxes, the walls, the familiar space that now felt foreign. Whatever this is, she said quietly, it started long before tonight. Her husband nodded. And in that moment, the mother realized that the basement wasn't just holding them physically. It was holding secrets that had been buried for years, waiting for the right moment to surface. Time moved strangely in the basement. At first, the mother tried to count the minutes by looking at the second hand on her watch, but after a while, even that felt pointless. The light above them stayed on, steady and uncaring. The small window near the ceiling showed only darkness. No footsteps. No voices. No sound from upstairs at all. She shouted until her throat hurt. She had knocked on the door until her knuckles ached. At some point, she stopped because it felt useless, not because she wanted to. He would have come back by now, she said quietly, sitting on a low box near the wall. If this was a mistake, if this was anger, he would have come back. Her husband stood near the shelves, his arms crossed. He hadn't tried the door in a long time. That bothered her more than anything else. "How long do you think it's been?" she asked. "A few hours," he replied. "A few hours," she repeated. "And you're still standing there like this is temporary?" He didn't answer right away. She stood up. "Say something." He looked at her, then away. "We need to conserve energy." That did it. The anger she had been holding back surged forward. "Stop talking like this is a camping trip," she snapped. "We are locked in a basement by our own child." "I know," he said. "No, you don't," she replied. "Because if you did, you wouldn't be this calm." He finally uncrossed his arms. His shoulders slumped slightly, as if the weight he had been holding was getting heavier. "This behavior," he said slowly, "I've seen it before." Her heart skipped. "What do you mean?" "I mean the planning. The silence. The control," he said. "This wasn't random. This wasn't anger." She stared at him. "Are you saying you expected this?" "I was afraid of something like it," he admitted. She felt dizzy. "And you didn't tell me?" "I didn't know how," he said. "And I hoped I was wrong." "Hope," she repeated, "while I was wondering why my child felt so far away." She walked toward him, her hands shaking. "You owe me answers. Now." He took a slow breath. "The basement," he said, changing direction. "You always thought of it as storage." "Because that's what it is," she replied. "Boxes. Old junk. That's what we let it become," he said. Her stomach tightened. "What does that mean?" He walked toward the far wall, where a stack of large boxes stood untouched for years. He placed his hand on one of them, then pulled it slightly aside. "This room," he said, "used to matter more than you know." She followed him, confused and uneasy. "You're not making sense." He turned back to her. "Do you remember when we first moved here?" "Of course I do," she said. He was still small. He was excited about having his own room. "Do you remember what we agreed about the basement?" he asked. She frowned, trying to recall. "We agreed to clean it. To organize it." He shook his head. "No. We agreed not to talk about it." Her breath caught. "Talk about what?" He hesitated again, and the silence between them stretched. "This house," he said finally, "came with history." "All houses do," she replied sharply. "That doesn't explain anything." He looked at the floor. "This one came with a reason the previous owners sold it so quickly." Her anger turned into fear. "You're telling me this now?" "I didn't want to scare you," he said. And then time passed. Life happened. And it felt easier to forget. She shook her head. "Forget what?" He met her eyes. "This basement was once locked from the outside before." Her legs felt weak. She leaned against a shelf to steady herself. "That's not funny." "I'm not joking," he said. "Who?" she asked. "Who locked it?" "The family who lived here before us," he said. "They had a child too." The room suddenly felt too small. "Stop," she said. "You're not saying this." "I am," he replied. "And I should have told you." Her voice rose. "When? When should you have told me?" "Before we raised our child in this house." "I didn't think it mattered anymore," he said. The house was empty. The past was buried. She laughed again, but there was no humor in it. "Buried in the basement." He didn't respond. She stepped closer. "What happened to that family?" "They left," he said. Quietly. "No one talked about it." "That's not an answer." He swallowed. "There were complaints. Noise. Arguments. Then nothing." Her heart pounded. "And you just accepted that?" "I did what everyone does," he said. I told myself it wasn't my business. She turned away from him, pressing her hands to her temples. You brought us into this house knowing this. I brought us into a home, he replied. I never thought it would come back like this. She spun around. Come back how? Through our child. He looked at her, pain clear on his face now. I think he found something. Her breath caught. Found what? Old things, he said. Old records. Old marks. She shook her head. No. No, he would have told me. Would he? Her husband asked softly. When he tried to talk, did we really listen? Her anger flared again. Don't turn this into a lesson. I'm not, he said. I'm telling you why this feels familiar to me. She crossed her arms. Then tell me everything. He took a deep breath. Years ago, before we moved in, I went to the basement alone. I noticed the lock. It was stronger than it needed to be. Newer than the rest of the house. And you didn't think that was strange? She demanded. I did, he said. But I ignored it. She felt sick. What else? There were scratches, he continued. On the inside of the door. Her vision blurred. Scratches. Yes, he said quietly. Like someone had tried to get out. She covered her mouth. Why didn't you say anything? Because there was no proof, he replied. And because I thought focusing on it would only bring fear into our lives. Tears filled her eyes. Instead, you let us live on top of it. I thought time had erased it, he said. I thought we were safe. She shook her head slowly. And our child. I think he sensed it, her husband said. Kids notice things adults dismiss. He asked questions. You remember that phase? She did remember. Late night questions. Strange fears. Wanting the basement light on even when he wasn't near it. You told me he was just imaginative, she whispered. I told myself that too, he said. Her voice broke. And now he's locked us in here. Yes, he said. And that's why I'm scared in a different way. She looked at him sharply. Explain. This isn't rage, he said. It's purpose. Her stomach dropped. Purpose for what? He hesitated. To make us face something. She felt anger rise again, mixed with fear. Face what? A story. Old scratches. No, he said. Face what we ignored. She stepped back. You're saying our child planned this to teach us a lesson? I don't know, he replied. But I know this isn't just about rules or trust. She wiped her face angrily. You kept this from me. All of it. I know, he said. And I'm sorry. Sorry it wasn't enough. The hours in the basement, the silence above them, the knowledge that this space had held pain before, it all crushed her at once. We are trapped, she said. Because of secrets. Yes, he admitted. She looked around the basement again. The walls felt closer now. The air heavier. If this place meant something, she said slowly, then locking us here means something too. He nodded. Her fear changed shape. It was no longer just about escape. It was about what would happen before that. Our child didn't just lock a door, she said. He opened something. Her husband didn't argue. And as the truth continued to surface, the mother realized that whatever was buried in this basement was never meant to stay buried forever. The words sat between them like a weight neither of them could lift. The basement light buzzed softly. The mother stared at her husband, waiting. She could feel something large pressing forward, something that had been held back for too long. Say it, she said. Her voice was steady, but only because she forced it to be. If there's more, say it now. He nodded slowly. His calm was gone. What remained was a tired man who had carried a secret for years and no longer had the strength to keep it hidden. This happened 20 years ago, he said. Before we moved in. Before you thought this house was just a house. Her chest tightened. Before we were married? Yes, he answered. But not before we were together. That hurt more than she expected. She folded her arms, as if holding herself together. Go on. He took a long breath. When I found this house, I thought it was perfect. The price was low. The neighborhood was quiet. It felt like a chance to start fresh. You told me that, she said. You said it was a lucky find. It wasn't luck, he replied. It was timing. He looked around the basement, as if the walls themselves were listening. I came here alone before we bought it. I wanted to check everything. That's when I realized the basement wasn't normal. Her stomach churned. You already told me about the lock. That was only part of it, he said. He walked to the far corner and sat down on an old wooden crate. His shoulders sagged. There was a room down here that didn't match the rest of the space. No windows. Thick walls. The door was reinforced. She frowned. There is no room like that. There was, he said quietly. I had it removed. Her breath caught. Removed. Yes, he said. I paid to have it taken apart and rebuilt into storage. The room felt like it tilted. Why? She asked. Why would you do that? Because I was afraid, he said. And because I thought I was protecting us. From what? She demanded. He hesitated, then spoke. From the truth. Her voice rose. What truth? That the family before us didn't just leave, he said. They disappeared from this house overnight. Her heart pounded. You said there were complaints. Noise. There were, he admitted. But there was also an investigation. She shook her head. You never told me that. I didn't want to, he said. I was young. I wanted a future with you. I wanted stability. I convinced myself that the past didn't matter if no one was hurt anymore. Her eyes burned. Was someone hurt? He looked down. No bodies were found. That's not an answer, she said sharply. He swallowed. The child who lived here before. He was taken away. Her legs felt weak. Taken where? By authorities, he said. After neighbors reported screaming coming from the basement. She pressed her hand to her mouth. And you still bought this place? I believed the worst was over, he said. I believed the danger was gone. Gone where? She asked. Into the walls. I thought tearing the room down would end it, he said. Erase it. Tears filled her eyes. You erased evidence. I didn't see it that way then, he said quickly. I saw it as cleaning up. Making it safe. For who? She asked. For us or for you? He didn't answer. Her voice shook. You built our life on top of this. Yes, he said softly. She turned away, pacing. You stood in front of me all these years and let me believe we were honest with each other. I told myself it was in the past, he said. That it wouldn't touch us. She stopped. But it did. Yes. She thought of their son. The questions he used to ask. The fear he sometimes showed without knowing why. He grew up here, she said slowly. On top of a place meant to trap someone. Her husband nodded. I think he felt it. The way kids feel things without understanding them. And when he found out? She asked. I think he found records, he said. Old news. Maybe I missed it. Her voice broke. And instead of telling me, you let him carry this alone. I didn't know he knew, he said. Not for sure. She laughed weakly. You didn't know, or you didn't want to know. He closed his eyes. I didn't want to know. The silence pressed in again. So this is the choice, she said. 20 years ago. You chose comfort over truth. I chose us, he said. No, she replied. You chose control. He flinched. She wiped her tears angrily. Our marriage was built on something missing. Something important. I loved you, he said. I still do. Love doesn't erase lies, she said. She thought of the lock turning. The way the door closed behind them. The careful planning. He didn't do this out of anger, she said. He did it to show us. Her husband nodded. To show me. And me, she added. Because I lived in this house without knowing what it held. She felt sick. He locked us in the same place someone else was once locked. Yes, he said. That's why it feels deliberate. Her voice was quiet now. He wants us to feel it. To face it, her husband said. She leaned against the wall, exhausted. I trusted you. I know, he said. And I trusted this house, she whispered. I raised my child here. I thought I was protecting you both, he said. I thought silence was safer. She looked at him, really looked at him, and saw the man she married and the stranger she never knew. You don't get to decide what I can handle, she said. Or what our child can handle. I see that now, he replied. Her fear shifted again, becoming something heavy and clear. This isn't just about getting out, she said. It's about what happens after. Yes, he agreed. She imagined her son upstairs, waiting, watching, listening. He wants the truth, she said. All of it. Her husband nodded slowly. Then we have to give it. The lock above them no longer felt like punishment. It felt like a demand. And for the first time since the door closed, the mother understood her son's actions completely. He wasn't trying to hurt them. He was forcing the past into the light. He had known for a long time. Not all at once, not in a clean moment of discovery, but slowly, in pieces that refused to fit together until they finally did. It started with the basement. When he was younger, he avoided it without knowing why. Other kids were scared of dark corners or loud storms. He was scared of that door. He couldn't explain it. Every time he passed it, his chest felt tight, like the air around him was thinner there. When he asked questions, he was told not to worry. It was just a basement. Just boxes. Just old stuff. As he grew older, the fear didn't leave. It changed. It became a curiosity. He noticed things adults didn't think mattered. The lock was heavier than it needed to be. The door frame had been replaced once, the wood newer than the walls around it. Sometimes, late at night, he thought he heard sounds from below, not voices, just pressure, like something remembering itself. He told himself he was imagining it. That's what he had been taught to do. The first real crack came when he was old enough to search things on his own. A school project led him to old local articles, scanned pages buried deep online. He wasn't looking for the house. He wasn't looking for his family. But the street name caught his eye. Then the photo. The shape of the roof. The fence. He clicked. The article was short. Vague. It talked about complaints from neighbors years ago. Loud arguments. Screaming. Then police involvement. It didn't name everyone. It didn't explain everything. But it mentioned the basement. His stomach dropped. He didn't tell anyone. Not his friends. Not his parents. He told himself there had to be an explanation. Adults always had explanations. Especially his father. Calm. Logical. Always sure. So he watched instead. He paid attention to how his parents spoke when the basement came up. How quickly his father changed the subject. How his mother looked confused but trusted the answers she was given. He began to see the gap between them. Not distance, but imbalance. One knew more. One didn't. That hurt more than the article. He started going into the basement when no one was home. Slowly at first. He looked at the walls. The floor. He found marks that had been painted over but not completely erased. Lines where something had been removed. A space that didn't match the rest of the room. He felt sick standing there. Weeks turned into months. Months into years. He carried the knowledge alone, growing heavier with every unanswered question. His parents argued about rules, about trust, about small things that suddenly felt pointless to him. They talked about honesty. He stopped believing them. Every time he tried to bring it up, the moment slipped away. He would start to speak, then stop. He was afraid of what would happen if he said it out loud. Afraid of being told he was wrong. Afraid of being told it didn't matter. Afraid of being told to forget. So he stayed quiet. His anger wasn't loud. It was controlled. It turned inward, sharpening his thoughts. He planned because planning was the only thing that made him feel steady. The idea didn't come all at once. It formed the way pressure forms, slowly, until release feels inevitable. If they wouldn't talk, he would make them. If they wouldn't face it, he would place them inside it. He didn't want revenge. He didn't want to hurt them. He wanted them to stop hiding. He wanted the truth spoken where it had been buried. When the argument happened, he felt strangely calm. The words about rules and trust felt empty. They were arguing on the surface while standing on top of something rotten underneath. So he used the basement. He led them there because he knew they would follow. They always did. Parents followed children when they thought they were still in control. Locking the door was the hardest part. His hand shook. He stood there for a moment after turning the key, listening. Hearing their voices rise. Hearing confusion turn into fear. He hated that sound. But he didn't unlock it. Because unlocking it would mean nothing changed. He went upstairs and sat on his bed, his heart racing. He didn't feel powerful. He felt exposed. Like he had finally stepped into the truth instead of circling it. He didn't leave the house. He didn't hide. He waited. Downstairs, everything shifted. The silence he had carried for years was now theirs. He knew they would fight. He knew blame would surface. He knew old arguments would come back. That was part of it. Truth didn't come gently when it had been avoided for so long. What he wanted was acknowledgement. He wanted his father to say it out loud. To stop acting like calm was the same as innocence. He wanted his mother to see that her confusion wasn't weakness, that it was the result of being kept in the dark. For the first time, the balance was gone. They weren't parents with answers anymore. They were adults trapped by their own choices. He listened at the top of the stairs sometimes, careful not to be heard. He heard raised voices. Then silence. Then something quieter. Something breaking. He didn't feel relief. He felt sad. Because this was never about winning. It was about truth finally having nowhere left to hide. He knew the moment his father admitted it. He couldn't hear the words, but he felt the shift, the way lies collapse when they are spoken against their will. The basement wasn't storage. The house wasn't clean. Their family story wasn't whole. And now, none of them could pretend otherwise. 4 years, power had lived with the adults. They decided what was said, what was hidden, what was for the best. Now that power is gone. Not because he took it, but because the truth did. He didn't want apologies whispered later. He didn't want explanations softened with excuses. He wanted the truth acknowledged exactly where it had been buried. Only then could anything move forward. Only then could the door open. The sound came suddenly. A sharp click. Metal against metal. The mother felt it before she understood it. Her body tensed, every muscle pulling tight. For a second, she thought she imagined it. Then the handle moved. The door opened. Light spilled down the stairs, brighter than the basement bulb. Fresh air rushed in, carrying the smell of the house above them. Normal air. Familiar air. They both stood frozen. At the top of the stairs, their son stood holding the key. His face was pale, his eyes dark and tired. He looked younger somehow, stripped of the distance and control he had worn for so long. "I unlocked it," he said quietly. The mother's legs gave out. She sat down hard on the step, pressing her hand to her chest. She wanted to cry, to rush up and pull him into her arms, but she stopped herself. Something told her this moment wasn't about comfort. The father moved first. He climbed the stairs slowly, stopping one step below their son. "You wanted us to talk," he said. "Yes," the son replied. "Now we will." They went upstairs together. No one spoke. The house looked the same, but it didn't feel the same. The walls felt thinner. The silence is heavier. They stood in the living room, facing each other. The son didn't sit. He stayed standing, arms at his sides, shoulders tight. "Say it," he said, looking at his father. "All of it. Not the version you cleaned up." The father swallowed. He looked at the mother once, as if asking for permission. She didn't give it. "Tell him," she said. "Or I will." The father nodded slowly. "I knew about the house before we bought it," he began. "I knew the basement had been used to trap someone. I knew the room was built for that purpose." The son's jaw tightened. He said nothing. "I chose to remove it," the father continued. "I chose not to tell your mother. I chose to believe that tearing it down erased what happened there." "You lied," the son said. "Yes," the father answered. "I lied." The mother felt each word land like a blow. Hearing it said out loud made it real in a way it hadn't been before. She had lived inside a story that was missing pieces, and now those pieces were cutting her open. "I told myself it was protection," the father said. "But it was scary. I didn't want to lose what we were building." "You built it on silence," the son replied. "On someone else's pain." The father nodded again. "Yes." The mother felt anger rise, hot and sharp. "You decided for me," she said. "You decided what I could handle. You decided what kind of home I was raising my child in." "I know," he said. "And I was wrong." She turned away, shaking. 4 years, she had trusted not just him, but the life they shared. Now she saw how much of it rested on something missing. The son stepped forward. "I don't want apologies," he said. "I don't want excuses." "What do you want?" the father asked. "I want accountability," the son replied. "I want you to admit that your choices hurt people. That hiding the truth didn't protect anyone." The father met his eyes. "You're right," he said. "It hurts you. It hurt your mother. And it dishonored what happened here before us." The mother closed her eyes. She felt grief for the family she thought she had, and fear for what came next. "Now you see," the son said quietly. "Why can't I stay quiet?" She looked at him then. Really looked. Not as the child she remembered, but as the person standing in front of her. "I see," she said. "And it hurts to say it." The room was silent again, but this silence was different. It wasn't avoidance. It wasn't fear. It was the space left after truth finally enters. The door to the basement was open. But nothing could go back the way it was. Morning came quietly. Not with relief, not with clarity, but with light slipping through the curtains as if nothing had happened. The house stood exactly where it always had. The furniture hadn't moved. The walls hadn't cracked. But the family inside it no longer fit the space the same way. They didn't sleep that night. None of them did. The son stayed in his room with the door open, not shut, not inviting anyone in either. The parents sat at opposite ends of the living room, the distance between them feeling wider than the room itself. No one turned on the television. No one reached for comfort where comfort used to live. When the sun rose, it didn't feel like a new day. It felt like a continuation. The mother watched her husband move around the kitchen, making coffee the way he always had. The same motions. The same mug. But she no longer saw routine. She saw avoidance that had lasted years. She realized something then that hurt more than the secret itself. It wasn't just what he had hidden. It was how easily he had lived with it. She thought back over their marriage. Over moments she had dismissed stress, as quiet moods, and the distance that all couples go through. She wondered how many of those moments had been shaped by something she was never allowed to see. She had trusted without knowing she was being asked to. That trust is gone now. Not shattered in one loud moment, but cracked slowly, the way stone breaks under pressure it was never meant to carry. Across the room, her husband looked smaller. Not weaker. Smaller. Like a man who had finally run out of places to put what he'd been carrying. "I don't expect forgiveness," he said at some point, his voice low. She didn't answer right away. "I don't know what I expect," she said finally. "But I know I can't pretend anymore." That was the difference now. Pretending was no longer an option. She thought about her role as a parent. About how she had believed that love meant protection, and protection meant not pushing too hard. She wondered how often she had accepted half answers because they were easier to live with. She saw now how silence can feel like safety, until it becomes a wall. Her son came into the kitchen later that morning. He moved carefully, like someone entering unfamiliar ground. He poured himself water, then stood there, not drinking it. "I'm not sorry for what I did," he said quietly, not looking at either of them. The words didn't sound cruel. They sounded honest. The mother felt something tighten in her chest, then loosen. "I know," she said. He looked at her then, surprised. "I don't agree with how you did it," she continued. "But I understand why." That was all he needed. Not approval. Not punishment. Understanding. He nodded once. "I just didn't want it hidden again." "It won't be," she said. Her husband didn't speak, but his silence was different now. It wasn't controlled. It was reckoning. The son finished his water and went back to his room. He didn't slam the door. He didn't announce anything. But something about the way he walked told her he had crossed a line he couldn't step back over. He wasn't a child asking for answers anymore. He was someone who knew what silence costs. Over the following days, the house stayed tense. Conversations were short. Careful. There were no loud arguments, but there was no comfort either. Just honesty, raw and unfinished. The mother found herself watching everything differently. The basement door, now unlocked, felt like a reminder instead of a threat. She went down there alone once, standing in the space where boxes sat quietly. She imagined what had been there before. What had been erased. What had been ignored. And she understood something deeply then. Secrets don't disappear when you bury them. They change shape. They wait. She didn't know what would happen to her marriage. She didn't rush to decide. But she knew it would never be the same. Love without truth felt fragile now, and she wasn't willing to live that way again. As for her son, she saw him stepping into distance. Not anger, not rebellion, but caution. He loved them, she knew that. But love no longer meant blind trust. It meant boundaries. And maybe that was healthier than what they had before. One evening, as the house settled into another quiet night, the mother stood in the hallway and listened. No humming appliances felt comforting anymore. No ticking clock promised normal. But there was something else. Clarity. Painful. Uncomfortable. Real. She understood now that families aren't broken by truth. They are broken by the absence of it. And once a secret is exposed, there is no going back, only forward, into whatever shape honesty allows them to become.